Hey everybody, this is Modern Refugee. This video here is going to go along with my previous video on our family medical emergency that we had. I'm going to go over just some tips from a caregiver's perspective, I guess, in preparedness. Now, I've had to fall into that caregiver role multiple times throughout my lifetime, actually from a very early age. The first time that I was basically a caregiver, I was in my late teens, early 20s, and it's just continued multiple times throughout my life. It's always been my lot in life, sort of, to help people out when they were having medical issues. Now, there's a few things. Typically, when there's medical issues in a family, it's going to be older members of that family. And older members of the family have been there and done that. So sometimes they don't like taking advice from young whippersnappers like what we are, even though I'm not that young anymore. But there is that sort of hurdle to get over. And nobody has ever forced a older person to do something that they don't want to do, basically. And a lot of them don't want to go to the doctor, and a lot of them want to shun medical attention for a lot of different reasons. And I've seen this multiple times. You always want to take a supportive and a diplomatic approach to helping the older folks out. Sometimes you're going to win, and sometimes you're not going to win. And you just do the best that you can. You try to say, hey, you know what? You haven't been doing so good for the last few days here. Why don't we take you in, get you checked out and whatever. And typically when they get to a certain point, they will agree to that. And but because they're agreeing to it, it's on their terms. So you're not forcing them, and you're not causing that extra anxiety when you're taking them into a medical situation. Because it's, take it from me, I was there just a year ago. It's a scary thing when you're laying in a hospital and you don't know, really what's going on. So you always want to take a diplomatic approach. You always want to take an easygoing approach. You never want to be demanding or forceful in any way when you're providing those caregiving type services, I guess. Another thing is medication lists. And medication lists are one of those things that have to be updated. As a person gets older and they have different medical issues, their medications will change. And it's very important to have a updated medication list. And this last instance that we had here with our family member, we had a medication list, but it wasn't as up to date as it should have been. And that is part of once you step into that caregiver role, you want to keep that that medication list as up to date as possible. And another thing that I have found useful over the years is having hard copies of previous medical tests, things like radiology reports from CAT scans, that kind of stuff. When my parents were basically going through the dying process, I actually kept manila envelopes, one with each of their names on it, and anytime they had any tests or anything done, those radiology reports, those hard copies of that stuff, I would make sure that I had copies that printed off. They went in those manila envelopes. Then those envelopes went along with me if there was any interaction with any type of medical providers. That way I always had that information with me. Another thing is legal preparedness, or what I call legal preparedness, and estate planning, that kind of stuff. Like, I had my surgery a year ago. One of the things that I took along with me the day of my surgery was my medical power of attorney for my wife. And I told the admitting people when I went in there, this is my medical power of attorney. My wife is my advocate, and if for some reason I can't speak for myself, she can speak for me. She can make the decisions that need to be made. And it's a good idea if you have that type of legal paperwork. Any medical facility where you might be taking your loved one to, you want to have almost that on file in advance. I did that with my parents, and my wife and I have done that for each other. When we go to have any type of medical procedure done now, all the local places that we deal with, they have those legal papers on file, so then you can they can access that, and there's never any question. And if there's something bad that does happen, and there's any need for those papers, you don't have to like run home and dig through a safe or a lockbox to find all that stuff in a bad situation. Those medical providers already have that stuff on file, and then you're theoretically good to go. So you never want to argue with someone when you take that caregiving role, and that's particularly important if they have some type of dementia. And it was told to me a long time ago, nobody's ever won an argument with somebody who has dementia. So you never want to argue with the people that you're trying to help or try to force them in any way. You want to be supportive, but you don't want to add that layer of anxiety on it. Old people are stubborn, and they don't take to that too well. It's better off to take a more diplomatic approach. You want to have that paperwork in order, and you want to have lists of medications, and you want to update that list as much as possible. Sometimes, they might go to the doctor, talk to the doctor, though, and they don't tell you about that in the caregiving role. So that's something that you got to be constantly asking questions. Hey, when you went to the doctor, did they give you any new medication or whatever? You want to keep that all up. And if worse comes to worse, I've seen this too. If worse comes to worse, if somebody's going by ambulance or whatever, you just grab all the medication and you put it in a bag, and you give it to the EMTs to take along with you. I've seen that as well. When people were walking into it kind of blind, they didn't know, everybody's got a spot where they keep their medication, kitchen counter or whatever. I've seen that where people have taken all those medicines, put them in the bag, give them to the paramedics, the people in the ambulance, say, I don't know what kind of medication they're taking, but this was everything on their counter, and then you let them figure it out after the fact. And then, of course, like I said, your legal paperwork. It's good to have copies of that legal paperwork. It's even better if you already have that on file where you're taking them to those particular medical institutions. But just some things from a caregiving, I guess, prepper point of view that I've done over the years. But most of us at some point in our lives are going to be a caregiver for someone else, whether it's a parent or a spouse or a grandparent. These things do come up, and it's good to have all your ducks in a row as much as possible ahead of time, because when medical things happen, most times they're going to be unexpected. Anyway, this is Modern Refugee. Appreciate all my subscribers out there. Hope you guys got a little information and some things to think about. As always, just another tool for your guys' toolbox. You guys have a good one.